Hello, friends. This is Josh with EverymanBio. I want to start off this week just by saying thank you to all of my followers on Instagram, especially those of you who have graciously reached out and offered to help me with my journey to learn how to do genetic engineering and synthesize my first or build my first genetically modified organism. Super excited about that, and I just achieved a milestone in my learning, which is DNA barcoding, and several of you have helped me with that journey, which was tough, but looking back, it was all the things that I needed to do to get to where I am today. So just want to say thank you for that. I hope that you guys are all doing really well. We are quickly approaching Thanksgiving and the holidays, which is can be a stressful time for folks, but also an exciting time. So I hope that each one of you are preparing for the wind down of the end of the year, settling into fall and winter, and generally looking forward to hopefully what's going to be a much better year next year. Yes, so wow, what can I say about my next guest? Nieves, she is a startup founder in the Berkeley, California, Northern California area. She works in the food tech, biotech area. She's a PhD. She's originally from Spain. She has a wealth of information about all things biology, genetic engineering, synthetic biology, biotech. Uh, we talked about her struggles with making a transition from scientific role to being a founder, which requires that you have to pick up a lot of new skills and learn a lot of new things when it comes to business. We talked about her finding her co-founder and her partner in the business, raising money, just so much good stuff that I'm excited about, that I feel so thankful that I get a chance to share with all of you. So, oh yes, I need to get in a better habit of this, but I could really use your guys' support to help grow the Everyman Bio podcast, whether that's all the things that everybody else asked for, subscribing, liking, and giving us a rating in iTunes. We're also on SoundCloud, so if you hang out there, anything you can do to support Everyman Bio would be greatly appreciated. It's still very early, and I'm still very much working hard to grow this. So anything you can do to help grow it. And I'm also looking for interesting new guests. I have a lot of people booked already, but I'm always looking to make sure that I have a pipeline of new guests on my show. And if there's anyone that's doing anything interesting in biology, I would love to talk to them, especially if they are supportive of the DIY bio movement. So please reach out to me. You can shoot me an email, josh@everymanbio.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram at everymanbio, or on LinkedIn. If you just search for my name, you'll find me. And let me know who you think I should reach out to, or if you can make a personal introduction, that works as well. Very much would appreciate that. So that's it. This is an amazing episode as usual. I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I get to do this. So without further ado, Nieves. So much for joining the Everyman Bio podcast. I'm really excited to do this podcast with you and get to know you more, and also just share more about you with the larger biotech community, because I think what you're working on is really cool. I think your background and your story is really awesome. And I should also mention that you have graciously offered to help mentor me on my first GMO, which I am super excited about. I think you're one of two people I know that I would consider maybe a GMO yeast expert. Probably is probably a good way to say that.
I guess, yeah, I spent all my life engineering yeast genetically. So technically, yes. It's the
And I
right
haven't done
description.
one, so I'm trying to do just one, a prototype. Um, so let's maybe just start with what, tell me about your company if you can. Like, what's the name of your company? What do you guys do, and what are you working on?
All right. So our company is named Novel Farms, and we are focusing on developing the technologies to create scaffolding for the cellular agriculture industry. And now, what is scaffolding, right? Scaffolding is, but we're developing biomaterials to create support, like a matrix so that cells, animal cells can grow and proliferate. So we can create a whole cut of meat without the need to slaughter animals. So that is basically what cellular agriculture means. And now there's dozens of companies in the race to really create this replicate meat that we create in the lab as accurate as possible. However, without this support for the cells, it's extremely complicated to create tissue, to create, you know, something that you can cut with a knife like this and not just sausages. So the focus of Novel Farms is to enabling this, developing this technology and provide it to all the other companies.
That's really cool. I know there's a big push right now in cultured meat and alternative protein sources. I think there's been Beyond Meat has really like them being so successful has really helped spur this industry in food tech and biotech. And so when you say scaffolding, you know, let's take it back, right? Because I'm a newbie to this field, and probably people listening don't know a lot about this. What we're trying to do is grow the same animal protein in vitro, right? In a not through the animal that the meat originally came from, right? In an artificial environment.
Yes.
And there's more to it than just taking, you know, because there's a couple of people that are growing like chicken cells, and you can take cells and put them in a nutrient-rich environment, and the cells will actually grow. But there's more to it than that, right? To actually turn that chicken into like a patty, you need a scaffold for the cells to grow on?
Exactly. Well, for the patty of a burger or meatballs, you don't. You can smush the cells together, have muscle cells and, you know, fat cells, and put it together, and, you know. But to create a to create a steak, you really need to achieve this texture. Like in meat, we have muscle cells, you know, we have fat cells, and then there's a third component that most people kind of like, you know, fly over, that is the connective tissue. So connective tissue is mainly comprised of collagen and a number of other proteins that are very necessary to create this matrix, right? Imagine a sponge and then the cells growing around it and with it in it. And that creates an environment that is good for the cells. They need support. So basically it's a very important component that we need to really replicate and to move cellular agriculture forward.
That's really cool. It reminds me of some of the research I saw on organ growing. Is they would take like different sorts of cells, I think maybe kidney cells, but they also had to be grown on a scaffold as well to create the shape of the organ. Because it's not enough to just have the cells, you actually need them to be organized in a particular way. Is that a similar concept to?
It's this exact same concept. It's exact, like actually we're trying to get like the advances in regenerative medicine. You know, people can create organs and like can create, but the technologies or the scaffolds available for that are extremely expensive. They cannot be used in cellular agriculture because, you know, we need to reduce the cost of producing this meat. So that's the challenge, to really find something that is extremely affordable and then, but it's something that is really, that you can customize to, because you need to add so many things to these scaffolds to really accurately replicate the tissue.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I would imagine the scaffolding is something all of these other food tech companies that are doing cultured meat are going to need. So is the idea that your company is basically providing a tool for all of these other cultured meat companies that they can use to grow their particular protein?
Yeah, exactly. They won't be restricted to just producing sausages and burgers. They will have the possibility to develop, you know, whole cuts, and that's the core mission of Novel Farms.
Have you noticed with some of the potential customers, like, are they, because like there's sort of two things happening at once. You're working on scaffolding, which is something these other startups need, but at the same time, presumably these other startups which are growing meat also need the scaffolding. So how are they dealing with not necessarily, are they also developing scaffolding, or is that something like you're trying to make in ways so that you guys can work together?
Yes, so that's a very good question because of course I'm aware that there are a number of companies, experimenting with several types of scaffolding in-house. So we don't know exactly, but no one has released. Well, no. There's a company in the UK, Higher Stakes, who have made some bacon. So they're using different technologies, and then a couple more. So it's like less than a handful of companies, and we all have different approaches. So it will be a matter of kind of seeing which one is the most affordable and the most, tunable, which is again our unfair advantage.
And maybe this is maybe too early in your company's life cycle, because I know it's a pretty new company and you're really working hard right now to figure a lot of stuff out. But is the end goal to like have a product that these other companies can order? They can get the scaffolding.
Got started with the technology, so we have two options: like sell the scaffolds themselves, like, and then someone takes them and infuse with the cells and let them grow and it's all ready to go. Or we can do joint development agreements with this company and kind of like work together to make that work.
Okay.
So it's that two ways, and they're like extremely different. So now since I'm a scientist, I'm really study all the business models there are in biotech and like mix max, so to really put together what we the best fit for us. But yeah, like one thing is like we need to figure out how to incorporate this scaffolding in bioreactors. So that's something that's we're gonna work on the next couple months. So once we do that, then we will know better how to provide the final product.
That's really cool. I really like the second option, because one of the things that it gives you is an opportunity to work directly with your customer to sort of refine and design the product that directly meets their need. But I would imagine maybe there's also some trade-offs with that approach as well, in that you really have to, like, whatever intellectual property you create, you really have to be protective of it, because they're going to have direct insight into it.
Yes. That's actually something that I'm actually struggling with it right now, because in the, when you fundraise, you need to explain the technology and show, like that it's really working and all those things, but yet it's a very fine line, and like you're like a bit scared, you never know, but it's something all founders find like challenging, I imagine. And yeah, it's something that one have to be very conscious about.
Yeah, definitely. And presumably, so that's interesting, because presumably you've spent a lifetime acquiring the scientific knowledge to be able to start this company. But I think what a lot of founders find, especially in biotech, because it does depend on a lot of scientific knowledge and experience to start a biotech company. And that doesn't always, it usually means that the business side of it is sort of tacked on. You sort of have to like quickly learn and ramp up on how to actually create a business, how to like probably deal with a lot of the stuff that a lot of biotech vendors don't really want to do, but they have to do, dealing with investors, dealing with like the business side of it. Could you talk a little bit about like what has your experience been with starting a business and dealing with the challenges of making maybe a transition from the science to the business side of it?
Well, this has been a wild ride. I like to call it like I'm getting my MBA on the streets. and granted, I actually got in contact into all the fundamentals of business and development and all that during my time at UC Berkeley. So while, in my free time, I would go to classes at the law school, at the engineer school, and management of technology innovation, or like startup law. And then I became chair of the entrepreneurship program. So the theory I read, I know the lingo, like I know everything, but it's one thing is just learning that, and another thing is applying it, right?
Absolutely.
So that's when it's like, whoa, yeah. Yeah, it's I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm liking it so much. I was not, I mean, I never thought about becoming CEO. It was something that was like kind of suggested to me, and I took the challenge. And now I'm like, oh my God, I love it. So it's the cool thing I have to say for people who might be thinking on transitioning, like do a career change like mine, is that, wow, so many cool things. Is that you're never bored. Like this is the best pandemic pastime ever. There's like, you can forget about everything that's happening in the world. You're like, your head is filled with like business stuff, and it's fun, basically. I don't know how that sounds, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually advise people that starting a business during a major economic downturn or something like, dealing with the coronavirus is actually really good. It's hard anyways to build a business in any environment. But if you can get a start when the economy's struggling and really use that time to lay down some groundwork and some foundation, because it takes time to build traction and actually get to where you have customers and paying customers and then profitability. That's maybe takes years to do that. But starting in a downturn market actually has a lot of advantages. One is the availability of labor or access to people tends to be higher because people get laid off, or people are, the economy's not moving as much. So, and people are more willing to drop their prices, so affordability for things. Now, I will say one challenge with COVID is the availability of certain materials has been difficult because the supply chain has been disrupted so much. You may have run into this.
Yes.
But in general, I think it's a good time. It's already hard enough to start and found a business and be successful. But if you can start it when the economy's down and stay alive long enough for the economy to come back, because it will, it's almost always cyclical throughout history, then you're ready because you made it through the toughest part of an economic cycle, and you're ready. And when your customers come online, you've got your product there ready to go.
Yes. However, I need to add that the major struggle of starting a company during the pandemic, especially being biotech, I just want to give a shout out to all the scientists who are working right now in the labs wearing a mask and with all the lacking reagents or like not being able to access the equipment they need. So that's basically what was our main struggle in the beginning, is to find a lab where we can work. Everything closed down. That delayed our proof of concept for
even actual physical space was even difficult to get a hold of because it was closed down.
Oh, yes. And like precisely. And then also, well, in addition to that, it happens that in the Bay Area, lab space is very limited. So there are not many options for small companies to have a affordable lab space. There are a couple options, like not many. So we're very lucky that we found something. We were able to develop, our proof of concept. If not, it would have been impossible. And I feel, bad for my co-founder. She's wearing the mask. It's very tiring. Well, not to mention all the doctors and nurses and all that. That's like, I just in general want to acknowledge that that's like, an added struggle,
Indeed, it's been tough for everybody across the board. So, yeah, I feel your struggle there.
It's my co-founder. Michelle.
Oh, you have a co-founder. I wasn't aware. Okay, shout out Michelle. Shout out Michelle.
Oh my God. Yeah. yeah, I mean, she's the one who created the prototype while I was fundraising. So of course, that's not like, it would have been impossible to do it by myself. No, we're like, we're a team. And then like, I can't believe I didn't mention her yet.
Well, I mean, it opens up so many questions about co-founders. You know, how did you two find each other in the first place?
Well, well, we were both postdocs at UC Berkeley. So basically, she was in the lab upstairs, and you know, I spent a lot of time in the lab upstairs. It was like my refugee kind of like, no, or my, you know, like adopted lab basically. So yeah, we know each other for like 6-7 years, or 6 years at least. And you know, we used to run into each other like late at night on a Saturday in the labs. It's like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You know, like, so in that sense, we're very similar. We're like both pretty much workaholics. So, and we have the same values and like in a lot of things. So that helps a lot. It helps create a culture, you know, the culture of the company. Just even with the two of us, we already see that it's good that we have several, you know, how can I explain it? Like the similar views on what company we want to create. And that's great. And also we complement each other very well, because she's extremely smart and sciencey, and even though I'm also a scientist, I'm more like into now if you come from the business side, so it's like maybe something that I'm more, you know, like I can see the big picture, and I can kind of the generalist, and she's like the science, and you know, so yeah.
And that's a great combination. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I tell people with co-founders is it's very risky when people are thinking about starting a business, and they often feel more comfortable having a co-founder. And I'm speaking from experience, because there's a lot of risk inherent with doing a startup, and you feel like if I can get someone else to go on this journey with me, it mitigates some of that risk. And to some degrees, I was going to say, to some degrees, that's true, in the sense that if you can bring someone who's a co-founder that offers complementary skill sets that you don't have, then you have that advantage that maybe you have, where you have someone that can really be your chief science person, and you have someone who can focus on the business. However, what I think often goes missing for new people is it is so important for you to really have a good relationship with the co-founder before you decide to go into business together, because that will dramatically change the nature of your relationship and how you work together, how you deal with challenges. There's a whole other personality and person involved at that point. And so I just want to say that as a word of warning that comes from experience, having taken on partners and co-founders from people that I really didn't know. You're opening yourself up for a lot of risk and potential downfalls, versus your individual story, Nieves, where you met someone in the lab. You guys worked together for 6-7 years. You got to really know each other. You got to trust each other.
Actually, we didn't work together. That's the trick. It's not that, it's kind of a more, you know, we work in the same department, so we know our backgrounds. And yeah, we didn't really actually work together. It was the first time. So that's why it was like a little bit risky in that way, because we didn't work together before, but we know each other personally. We know what our, you know, principles and values lay. So that was the decision why, you know, we said, yeah, this is perfect. You know what I mean? Like,
you had a relationship with her, you know.
I mean, we know each other. It's like, you know, when you know someone you trust, you know that person not.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
But you know, this person is super legit. So that was the reason why we went for it.
Absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
want to say something about what you were introducing, the concept here of the co-founder, etc. You started saying that it's very, you have to decide whether being a solo founder or have a co-founder, and what are the implications of that decision. I was gonna cut you right there because I just want to make a very important note, is that for biotech, like I haven't seen many. Well, okay, there's some people who are solo founder, but it's not recommended. It's not like, perhaps because you come from a software kind of background, and there, people, create this and this code, or I don't know how it works, and then there are more solo founders in that area. But in biotech, there's like for instance, I could have not done lab in fundraiser. It's impossible. It's completely impossible. So it's when it's a kind of like more, I don't know, there's lab, there's so many things. It's
There's a lot
and
to
being
do.
two is already very, very little, like being two people is already like, whoa. you know
Yeah. My point was not to advocate for solo founders. There's a place for those for sure. And
yeah,
perhaps you see more of them in tech. Although what I would say in tech is whether or not someone's a co-founder or not, having a team that is bought into your idea and is on board with that journey is those startups are way more successful. Whether or not you have a formal equity partner or not, having people that are who support you and are ready to go on this journey with you, it does wonders in terms of your success, and also the ability to attract capital, because it sort of sends a message to the investment community that you have people that are like want to work for the company, that believe in it. But really my main point was, if you are going to get a co-founder, which it sounds like in biotech, the trend is that you probably should look into it, or at least that the data shows that there aren't a lot of successful biotech companies that are solo founded. The important thing I wanted to get across was, try to find a co-founder that you can develop a relationship with, that you can get to know before you go into business with them. That's the main point.
absolutely. Because you know what they say, like a co-founder is like your, it's even more intense than having a
A
husband or a
marriage.
wife, or like a marriage, or it's like really, and the company is your baby. And if my co-founder hears me, she will be like, "Ooh, weird." No. But it's true. It's like, really, you're gonna go through so much stuff that you really need to develop a very strong relationship. It's like the strongest team you can ever imagine. So
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my followers and listeners are from the DIY bio community. They don't necessarily have formal education in science or a master's degree or PhD, and sometimes not even an undergrad. Um, and it's something I like to talk about in this show, because everybody has a different perspective that's shaped by their own experiences. And you obviously went all the way through to grad school, and I don't know if you have your PhD or not. I think you said you did.
yes.
Yeah.
Call me
What?
Dr. Nieves.
Okay, doctor.
No.
Um, um, have you thought at all about just assessing your own experience with your education and weighing that out with, how much did I get out of the time and investment that I put in the education versus the real world hands-on experience that I got from working with the organism and hands-on in a lab? And what would you say are sort of the places for each of those, a traditional education versus what I'm doing, right? Which is self-learning and reading papers and teaching myself how to do this stuff in my home lab, which is behind me. Did you have any thoughts
Yes,
on that, or can you
I have,
share
I
some of your
have, I
thoughts?
have, and my thoughts are more coming from an old woman who can tell you like this do-it-yourself movement is something was not there when I was growing up. I didn't have a possibility, or it didn't exist. They were not like, I started in college. I didn't even have a computer, and when we're connecting, I'm pretty, so in saying that, I just want to say that people who self-educate have my complete admiration, or like, I'm like super, because that's like, it's better than being forced to go to college so that you can get a degree and do this. It's like, you really want to learn that, and that's so valuable, and it just tells the future employer or whatever that this person went all the way to teach themselves something. That means the drive of that person is incredible. Like, so yeah, I'm a huge advocate of self-learners. And in my case, I was basically, because I'm from Spain, it's a different mentality, because you have education of it is universal. Like, everybody can access to it. It doesn't matter how much money you have. So for me, it was not, I had access to it. So I'm privileged in that sense. and here the mentality is more, you need to have money, invest this time and all that. So I completely understand people choose to not go that way, because I probably wouldn't have if I would have been born here, to be honest, because I come from I didn't have money to, I would have never gotten into college. No way. And then regarding your question was about what is the college experience, the hands-on experience. And I have to say, for me, my PhD, because I did it in Germany, it's a job. You pay taxes. So from the moment I finished college onwards, I was working as a scientist. So that's the mentality in Germany. You're working, it's part-time, you get paid, and the other time is considered your PhD, and the other time is the work you do for the research institution you're working for. So I consider myself like, I was on the job. I was doing this, I was working. You know what I mean? It's a different mentality. So in that sense, of course, I started learning everything when I started doing it in my PhD. So it's incredibly, it's a theory, and then you do it. You have to do it, and it's how you learn. And making mistakes, making a lot of mistakes, and then you won't never forget that, and that's how you learn.
It almost seems backwards to me that it's not until the PhD level that you actually get to be hands-on and apply and do the work of whatever the career is that you wanted to do. And it seems seems like it should be the opposite of that. Like, it seems like you shouldn't have to put all these years and money and to finally get to the PhD level to be able to do that.
Okay, yeah, that's another particularity of my background. Again, so in Spain, there's a free education and you can go to school. But we don't have for instance, here in California, all these, companies, biotech companies where undergrads can go and get and learn and, do internships and have a project and work in the lab and all those things. It's way more hands-on in undergrad level because they're more industry. And in Spain, the innovation industry is not, it's, not as strong as in the US. So that's why for me, like, yeah, I could go to school, not pay anything, but there were like not many exciting labs where I could go and do this stuff, so we only did a little bit. And that's why when I went to Germany, and it's when I really kind of were able to apply all the things I studied for 5 years, So yeah, so it's very particular of my kind of weird, different from the US traditional path.
I love to hear how supportive you are of the DIY bio community, and that you sort of get it. That people who are so interested in something and have the motivation to learn how to do some of this stuff, that signals to you a lot of information about that person and their capabilities, especially if they actually can build some sort of portfolio. And this applies even in the tech world. I tell most software engineers are self-taught, and I tell new people that, look, don't worry about the education. Start coding, start building something, build a portfolio. Because when you show up to a company in the tech world today, they just care about like, they just want to know, can you actually build stuff? Can you start coding from day one? They don't really care about your education. They just want to know, like, I always like to use house analogies. We build houses. They want to know that you know how to use a hammer.
Yes.
Do you feel like in biotech there's acceptance to hire people that don't have the educational background but have the self-taught, you know, resume? Is there?
It's like, okay, okay. Woof. That's okay. For biotech science in general, as you know, and because I come from an strong academic at the ivory tower, there are plus and cons. So I'm a supporter of, self-learners, 100%. But then we get into a very kind of sensitive territory when we talk about, the results of a scientific experiment. And that's what we have, a peer review system, which is I'm not saying it's the best, of course, but it's always important to have some kind of one layer of independent person who can assess or validate what you did, and you prove it with, I did this experiment and this is what I came out, and therefore I have this conclusion. So in science, we really need to have some sort of overview of that, like someone who's assessing that from a very unbiased way, right? So that's why is the difficulty for people who are self-teaching, science is at one point there's going to be the need to kind of validate what you've done in the lab, and and you show everything you've done, and it's okay, but it's the scientific community, even though I'm not the most stronger supporter of peer review and the academic journals and all the publishing peer how's it called, perish or publish or perish thing and all those. I'm not, but I do believe in the scientific community that needs to be some kind of so I guess in that sense with coding it's kind of a very different
But are you saying, no, it makes sense. So are you saying there's aspects about biotech where there are some core competencies around the scientific process that maybe the amateur community doesn't get an opportunity to really learn or appreciate? And that really comes into play when you're talking about, coding is different in the sense that you're not dealing with necessarily people's lives as close as maybe in bio, because you're dealing with organisms. Exactly. And obviously there's a level of rigor that comes into that. But all the things that you said about the information needing to be verifiable and peer reviewed, I'll just use myself and talk about myself as an example. As an amateur, I want that validation. For example, when I inevitably, hopefully, design this custom yeast strain and produce the titers of the compound that I'm trying to engineer to produce, I would love to have someone like you look at the results that I created and point out what data did I miss, or what data do I need to make sure that I absolutely collect, so that when I go to present my prototype to the world, I can do it with the type of rigor that you show. So I'm wondering, is the barrier for the biotech community in terms of what I'm ultimately getting at is I see a shift in potentially as time goes on for the same thing to happen in tech, where if you are smart enough and you have the motivation, you can learn real tangible skills that have value to companies, and those companies will be willing to hire you. In biotech, I'm trying to figure out what is the pathway and what are the barriers for biotech companies to embrace someone like me, who self-taught, built my own lab, did a prototype of a GMO, and can show them like, I have some skills that are of value, even though I don't have the fancy degrees and all the letters after my name.
Yeah, I think it's not, I'm not referring to the fancy degrees. I'm more like years of experience doing in research and all those things. There's so many nuances, and it's basically like, you know, like you think about doctors, like physicians, and like in the hospital, like what in the Hippocratic, you know, no, how's it called?
Oath.
Hippocratic?
Yeah. Hippocratic oath.
Yeah.
Do no harm.
Exactly. So with scientists, we have the same kind of like, we criticize like what we question ourselves continuously to seeking the truth. We are like, right, and the experience of like knowing that these things might look like this is the result, but it might not, and you have to really prove it like 3 times, and then you have to do the experiment like, I don't know, a number of times to be sure, etc. So what I'm talking about is like, think of it as if you go to a hospital and the doctor says, you know, I'm gonna do surgery in you, and I learn, you know, myself, I just self-taught myself, you know. So that's what I'm referring to, like at that level, you know, that they're in a company. Of course, you can, you know, get a job and do, you know, what you apply, what you learn, but then there will have to be someone who supervises, who then it will, in my opinion, will have to have you know, years of experience doing that thing, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm
No,
making any sense.
You are, and I don't have all of these ideas worked out. That's why I'm asking you. You have a totally different perspective than I do, and it's like, you potentially are going to hire people, or maybe you're already in the process of hiring people, and it's interesting for me to hear about what are some of those barriers to someone who's maybe like self-taught, because I just think that the technology is getting to the point where you could do some pretty advanced and cool stuff as a DIYer. But there's probably some set of those people that are going to want to maybe switch careers and go get a job in that. And so what is that pathway for them? And it's early. I don't know that that pathway is well defined yet. But one of the things that I'm hearing from you is that at the end of the day, if you're going to apply for a job, your employer wants to have confidence that you have the capabilities to actually execute. And also, it sounds like there is a scientific mindset that is very important to entering into this industry. And some of the things that perhaps the degrees or the formal education gives you is a little bit of that reassurance that you have some of that. But probably more important is what you touched on, is the actual experience under trained people who have been doing this for quite a long time.
So I'm going to give you an example. I work with Jake, who's not, you know, he...
my last podcast guest, Jake
exactly.
Keller.
So he has his skill sets in fermentation, and we worked together, and we had a cloning project. Okay, so he didn't know anything about that, and you know what? Like, we worked together, and he like very quickly started working on cloning and successfully cloned a number of plasmids, right? So what I'm saying is like, there's, the only barrier is finding someone who's gonna guide you until you get to that proficiency. So whether it's yourself or whether it's at a company or in a university or whatever, it's like you need guidance in that sense. So even if you get to, you know, create your prototype, that doesn't stop there. Like the biology special, it's like a black hole where you get like so many things can go wrong. So I'm just saying that I will happily hire Jake as like, he's great like as a self-driven person who learns. I would rather hire someone like him than someone would come to the title and says, okay, you know, and I'm done, bye, I just want to get a paycheck. So that's what I'm saying. But in general, that's my personally what I would do.
I agree with
But
that.
I don't know the companies. And but of course, it will be, you have to have someone in the company who's going to kind of be supervising this person until get the proficiency that is required. And in the meantime, this person is so, so good at other things in general, and the personality and the culture of the company. So then it's like, that would be an entry point for do it yourself folks, I would
Yeah.
suggest.
Yeah, no, that's really good information, and it reminds me of another piece of advice I like to give people who are first-time entrepreneurs or just general entrepreneurs, startup founders, and DIYers who are trying to learn a new skill is the importance of having a mentor. And some of what you're talking about is, in many ways, you're my mentor or one of my mentors for this project that I'm working on. And I'm trying not to use too much of your time. That's always the struggle. I have more questions than you would believe. But the more that I push myself to, no, don't ask her. Actually, like a couple of days later, I go, I'm so glad I didn't ask her because now I know the answer to that question.
Well,
So I'm trying to save the hard ones.
no, I'm happy to. Okay.
But so going back to you though, and your story of how you arrived where you're at today, did you have any mentors that really helped guide you along?
I mean, there's no way I could have gone here without mentors. It's like, at least, I don't know in other jobs, but it's like, it's very traditional. You have to have mentors. So it's like, in academia, as well as in entrepreneurship, like, how else are you gonna know how to do things? It's not just about learning something in the theory. It's about guidance and, like, a professional who knows what they're doing, and you're like a little, so it's like essential in most professional setting. You really need a mentor in your career, if you want to, someone who can advance, guide you, because it's not all about memorizing things or like learning things, right? It's also about personality, your soft skills, and how you deal with challenges. And then, because I mean, at least in academia, like, there's so many challenges to science that you don't know how to do. You don't know what's going on, inside of the cell, and you have to figure out. So you cannot do that alone. Like, seriously, it's just.
Do you have advice on how folks can find a mentor if they don't already have one?
Well, the internet. I mean, no, I'm saying, like, it's not that I have experience finding mentors. I'm talking about my PhD mentor and my business mentor are two critical people who have, I'm here because of them. So I'm talking more about, I'm lucky that way, that it's like, well, in academia, but this automatically you have a mentor, right? And in entrepreneurship, there are like so many platforms right now that you can access to. There, like, for, there's like communities. So, it's the internet, we're all connected. So it's easier to find something like that back in the day when I was, at the, when there was not so much internet. So there, I don't have experience with that, because my mentors were like kind of serendipitous encounters, except for my PhD advisors. So, so yeah, I don't have much more to say on that. Like,
No, I think, like, you use the network that you had available, and that's what I would say to people is you have to network. You have to get engaged with the community, and that's how I met you. I mean, you were 2 or 3 connections away from how I actually found you. I didn't necessarily seek you out.
exactly. So it usually doesn't happen by. It's not that I was like, oh, I want a business mentor, and I was looking at all. It was actually the other way around. So, I mean, yeah, it's, you have to, have a network, and then you'll find your, by talking, you find people who align with your vision, and and there are mentors out there, like, they don't have it on their resume, but at core, they like to mentor. So you just have to kind of sense who is like willing to enjoys mentoring, and it's, it's not just you're asking, it's just they like to do it. And there's so many benefits of mentoring people as well. You know, it's passing on knowledge is like, it's a satisfaction, in my opinion, like it's something good.
Well,
You know?
I would say finding folks like you is kind of rare. I'm like that too, though. I really enjoy teaching and helping other people be successful. So there's satisfaction that comes from that. But I would say to people that are looking for a mentor, it's a two-way street with a mentorship. You need to be willing to do a lot of the work. You know, I look at people who mentor me, and I have different mentors for lots of different things from all aspects of life, from my psychological well-being, my therapist, to business people that I know, to funding people, to tech people, and now biotech. And what I always try to make sure that I do is that I offer some value back to that other person. And that value could just be like that I use their time, cautiously, because time is the most precious thing that we have. And I also try to make sure that I show them that I'm working really hard and that I'm very passionate about it. And then I get a lot of people that will direct message me on, say, Instagram, and they want me to just give them the roadmap and lay it all out and give them every little detail and answer, when there's so much that they could just go do a search and they would find the answer themselves. Well,
I think
they want me to spoon feed the information to them.
I think that's the thing. It's like, you have to find a good mentor who they, you know, they're willing to be mentors. They love to teach. And then you, as a mentor, you need to find the good mentees. You know, like, it's like, you know, and it's obvious for a mentor. It's just like someone who you see as your little self. And he's like, oh, I've been there, I can tell you, you know. And then it's like, if you recognize that person and see that they're hard workers, and they will pass along the information that you provide them, and so that it continues. It's like storytelling, right? Like, you know, in ancient times, people were passing information one to each other, you know, so it's kind of the same concept. And then whatever they create, in part, you're like, yeah, you know, I put my little grain of sand in there.
Can we talk a little bit about funding biotech companies? I don't know how much you can share or where you're at in the life cycle of your business. Have you gotten a seed round, or are you Series A or I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, no. So we incorporated in April. So usually you start with a pre-seed funding. Is whatever it takes you to get the proof of concept. And then a seed is, you know, when you're aiming to kind of grow beyond that. And so I'm happy to share, actually, that we've finished the first close. So we surpassed 500K, and now we're looking towards $1 million, $1.5 million to kind of grow as a team, and like really develop the technology further to create the best steak ever. You know, so yeah, it's like a marathon.
Well, when you and Michelle, you talked about pre-seed, when you and Michelle started the company, did you self-fund that early stage, or did you have someone to give you like some pre-seed
Absolutely
capital?
not. We come from academia. Okay. There's no way.
Explain what that means to people that don't know. The implications of that.
Okay. I imagine that in the tech world, like if you work as a software engineer company, you earn, I don't know, you have over a six-figure salary for several years. So you have savings.
You have the
and
savings.
then you can decide to start a company with those savings. And, you know, I would do that. However, if you're a scientist, you're pretty much like, you know, you earn minimum wage maybe like for a long time. It's like barely you're thankful if you get paid. You know, it's like, I consider scientists as like artists, you know, they're like just so being a scientist or an academic scientist in the Bay Area, even worse. So absolutely no savings for that. But But no, we incorporated. We
How did
applied.
you find your pre-seed investment, and how much was it, if you don't mind me asking? Just more or less so we can help other people that want to start a biotech company.
Yes, yes. Well,
How did you find them? How did you pitch to them? And was it one or was it multiple investors?
yes. Okay. Yes. First of all, we applied to Big Idea Ventures Accelerator program, who is focused on culture meat and plant-based meat. So I applied to that program by the end of March. And it was kind of like I passed the deadline, but they reopened. I was like, oh my God. And I thought I would never get in because we only have the idea. And now, yeah, the proof of concept. So I was like, and there was COVID happening. I was like, there's no way we're getting in. But we did. We proved them that we know what we're doing and trust us, this is gonna work. So that's how we got our first 125K. And then mid-June, we were able to buy our microscope, secondhand, of course, the cheapest we could find. And then we started to work in the lab. And so my co-founders did that, only that lab. Well, only, that's a lot to do there. And then I focus on everything business, like all the business incorporate, blah, 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 and meeting other investors. So through the Accelerator program, through my network, I got introduced to, through my mentor, through, I started getting introduced to VCs. And then we got our proof of concept a month after starting the lab. And that kind of show that we know what we're doing, and like convince an angel investor. And then later on, VC started seeing the value of it. So and I kept hustling until I got a 500K. So it has been a very fun summer. And so all I've done is talking to investors and like figuring out business models, financial projections, and all the things that need to be kind of knocked down. And yeah, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you started out with an accelerator that was focused on accepting only companies that did the type of work that you're looking to do, which is great, because usually accelerators they have like a curriculum and a program that you go through, and it gives you an opportunity to learn about the business side of it, of starting a startup in that particular area. But it also gives you a chance to establish relationships with your investors. And that's a big reason why you're able to close that initial round, the pre-seed of 150K. Now, it was just you and Michelle at this point when you got the 150K. What was your plan on how to spend that money? It's not a lot of money. Presumably you use some of it to pay yourselves to live off of.
Not in the beginning.
No. Okay.
No, not the first month.
You bought a microscope?
So basically with that money, what you do is work for biotech, you need to buy reagents.
Okay.
They're very expensive. So it's all about paying for the lab space, paying for reagents, paying for plasmids, paying for cells. So it's basically the priorities to buy the things you need to move forward with the technology. And then only when we got a little bit more, we start paying ourselves. So yeah, that's the last thing you.
So it was really about like,
let's survive, to pay rent and food, and then everything else goes for research. So unlike other, tech or it's not just having you need to buy so many things, right? So we need to raise so much more money for biotech than for other.
Yeah, and so the goal of that first investment was to create a prototype, so that you could then go and do the next big round.
Exactly.
And now for this next big round, what's the strategic plan for the business on how you use that next? So you've got a prototype. You presumably have also had a chance to work on the story that you're telling to your investors and where this company is starting to shape up and where it's going to go. what do you now, you have a $500,000. It sounds like a lot. It's really not that much money when we talk about like biotech and the costs associated with it. But how do you plan to use that money, generally speaking?
Well, once we close the $1.5 million, so the first thing I will do as a CEO is to build the, I like to call it the dream team, assemble. So the first thing is like, we have a plan on which people we need to complement our skills, and the key things we're gonna need, like someone in bioengineering, someone especially some business licensing technologies, and grow it, and then research associate to help my co-founder in the lab, and like a tissue culture engineer. So that's the main thing. The first is to grow the team so we have more capabilities to move faster. Right, like moving fast is critical, and as you know, in startup world. And then the other thing will be like eventually to with our next Series A would be like, right, when you raise money to grow, to start a pilot facility, or to start, scaling up the production of what you're making. So yeah, next year is going to be all about developing all the features we want to put into these scaffolds, like to, and then create the tissue, and then create the, this texture that's, so yeah.
It's so exciting.
It's going to be hard, R&D next year, but then once we finalize, we create this like very nice steak, then we move on to phase 2 of in 2022. Yes. So yeah, like I'm looking at starting racing for Series A by the end of next year.
That's super exciting, in just a short amount of time too, to go from the accelerator and just an idea all the way to we're raising Series A and growing out the team and scaling. So that's incredibly fast, by the way, for people listening. But that's super exciting, and I feel honored to know you and to be able to be part, or at least be able to be a spectator on your journey here on out. One question that came to my mind, because this is kind of where I'm at, is at the idea phase. What advice would you give someone like me who has an idea for a concept and convincing an investor to invest in that idea? What were some of the things that you had to do to show to them, like, you don't have anything tangible, you just have yourself, you have this idea that presumably you're passionate about? How do you convince someone to believe in that idea? What was your story, and then what advice would you give to me?
Well, in our case, because this idea came up as we came from, the university, and like, so the first thing we did, like the idea when, my co-founder got this Eureka, whatever. Then the first thing I did was like, wait, that sounds, is it doable? And then I start asking her questions. So, but wait a minute, but what? So I was like the contrarian. So we spent February just me trying, I'm like, no, I don't believe this is going to work. Like being the backup, like, no, this is sounds too good to be true. And like, so what we did is like intensive research on the, it's what we know how to do, like we went to, papers and look, okay, this is the hypothesis. We think this is going to work because we've seen these old publications who prove this and this. So therefore our idea is going to work, so we kind of build our technology on paper, like we with all the citations and all the things. And I guess in our case, because, like I spent 17 years doing research. So it's like, convince them that we have the experience to do it. And other cell-based meat companies, they start, you really need a research, like intensive team in the beginning, right?
Did you find that those pre-seed investors really cared about, like, you were in an accelerator, so probably they were more technically inclined than typically.
Oh, well, yeah, now that's a good question. So
yeah.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I want to like obviously, uh, if I'm an investor and I don't have any background in biotech, I would trust you because of your life experience and your work history and your academic experience. And truthfully, if it, you know, I'm just thinking like to a typical investor, if you were to pitch to them the technical details of all the research that you did, they probably wouldn't understand it,
exactly.
and you're not
So
going to
let me,
sell them on that
yeah,
aspect.
that's totally right. You know, I just was giving because that for me is the reason why. But now that you're saying that, I totally agree. It's definitely not not that. I like to believe it was that. But yes, okay. The other part I think that was very important, and I kind of it's just my tendency, but is that of course the other part is like the unmet need. You know, what problem are we solving? Happens to be that we did choose the right problem because it's something not many, it's like really a problem. Like they're not really affordable scaffolds out there, and like there are only a few companies that have different approaches. So it's a very small niche. And by tackling a problem that's going to, once the cellular agriculture industry starts commercializing and then expanding, we need to start now creating this technology. So I think that investors view the potential, and like when you have like a good idea that matches a huge opportunity, then it's both things. Okay, so I just forgot of it, you know, because I tend to go on the business side, the science side, but yeah, totally. Like it's yeah, actually not
There's a business side.
Wanted to know all the nitty gritty of the science. Actually, I had to learn that. You know, so I'm glad you reminded me. It's not just that, it's also what problem.
Hold on one second. We have a little bit of a connection.
I see you.
It's coming back.
Okay.
All right, good. We're back. We're almost done. On when you did your pre-seed raise, was there one meeting with investors? Were there multiple? And then did you guys put together a pitch deck, and that's ultimately what closed the deal? Or what did it look like when you were engaging to close that pre-seed?
All right. First of all, like now I call it, we close the 500K and call it pre-seed, but it's more like ongoing. It's like you know.
Oh, I
it's
see.
not like we close. It's just that we pass this threshold, right? But yeah, it's a.
You have a relationship now where if you need more capital, there is, you know, as long as they probably have a lot of visibility and insight into your business. So if you can justify the need to spend more, they're there to provide that additional capital as you need it.
No.
Okay.
No. Okay.
They're not a credit card. They're not a credit card.
No. This is not. No, it's not how it works. And yeah, I didn't know how it worked before I started. So it's, you learn as you go. So the first thing is, you know, being introduced to a VC who's interested in that area that you're tackling, right? Then you have the first meeting. You introduce yourself, your company, the idea, and business model. And then they decide whether is this interesting to have a second meeting with you. And then if they do that, then yes, you're in the good path. And then you have more, you know, you talk to several people so that people can assess the business, the team, etc. separately. They gather and discuss it and all the, you know, all the things, and then they decide, okay, yeah, we think this is, they do the due diligence and like check all the things that you're saying is, you know, that makes sense. And then is when they decide to offer, you know, like we want to invest this amount, and then you start negotiations. So that can take, from one investor, it can take our first, after the accelerator, our first VC took 2.5 months, even though it was very fast because every week we were moving forward with a new meeting. So, but in total, like, even though I thought it, like the interest was, we were moving forward, it took a 2 months and a half. So yeah, it's a process. So that with each investor that you talk to.
And
right?
did you have like a pitch deck? Like when you were doing those first VC meetings, were you just having conversations with them and just pitching them the idea, like telling them what you're thinking about doing? Or did you sit down and show them like a deck of the idea in a more organized fashion?
It's funny because, okay, I have two things to say about that. First, my very first VC meeting was before COVID, so it was at an office, and I was like, "Whoa, so nervous!" And I was like, "Who?" So yes, you come with a pitch deck, and then, however, I kind of just didn't use it much because I came in, I put the pitch deck, and then I started talking. I don't know, before setting up the pitch deck on the screen, I started talking about myself, and I just do it like a story, like kind of link it. And I just told them everything. And then we were like, oh, the pitch deck. And then it's like, well, let's just go through the slides, So that was one experience I had before COVID. And then now it's more the pitch deck. So first we have a Zoom meeting, and then after that first meeting, it's like, do you have a deck so that we can have for our records and to pass it and to discuss your company, to have something to look at, and the executive summary, just one page of all the key concepts. And they use, just to have it as for their records and to, okay, today we're talking about novel funds, and then, to remind themselves, because they have so many meetings, right? It's just to remind who is who. So it's more like a tool to,
facilitate the story and the information.
Yeah, archives. Yeah, it's like to have this is,
and how was, like, did you, in your pitch deck, it's like the struggle, I think, for a lot of companies in the very early days is there's so much unknown. You may not even know who your customer is. You don't even know what your end product's going to look like. So how do you straddle that when you're trying to put together a pitch deck and trying to project like how big the market is? And
well, yeah, the pitch deck. So for our demo day, which happened like 15th of October last month, yeah, the pitch deck was very important because it's not a Zoom meeting. You're like, pitching for a lot of investors at once. And so yeah, the pitch deck design and like having like really, tip it up like for 3 minutes and put all the information you want to put in the 3 minutes. That's what my biggest struggle, and it's extremely hard. It's extremely hard. So, but it's a very necessary task, of thing that you need to get good at, right? And it evolves with time as well. So one thing that I would say is, for instance, in our case, because we provide a technology, we are B2B, but we have a goal to create a prototype to showcase the technology. So we have like this kind of in collaboration with another company to create Jamón Ibérico, which is our target product, right? But it's in a way that we are so early that it's very extremely difficult to explain that this is the prototype, and we're generating as a part of a joint development agreement with this other company, and we're a B2B company, and put that concept into one slide. And so now what I'm doing right now is really researching all the business models there are in biotech, and I feel like we need to kind of, me as a CEO, and because we're so early, it's extremely difficult to kind of like get the business model right, because it requires, and even talking to a lot of advisors, I'm still working on it, so yeah.
yeah,
it's just like
that's part of the journey of the early stage startup, is working through all of those directions that you could go in. Did you have any hard no's or rejections along the way? What did those look like?
Oh yeah. To be honest, okay, I actually didn't look at the percentage, but let's say we didn't have many hard no's right away. Let's say maybe a 9. a must, and some of them were part like it was not the right fit, and so they tell you per email, hey, we look at this and we're not interested, and then usually it's like maybe we're too early, which is usually the case. So instead of saying no, it's like, but I want to be updated in the future.
The door's still open.
The door still opens,
Okay.
and then sometimes is, maybe like they mean it, or sometimes it's just, it's like, you never know. Like
You
if
never
investors
know.
are like, they're not ready yet for our investment, but maybe in a few months they are. So it's more like creating this network in which you say, okay, you're not ready yet. Okay, you'll hear from me back in a few months, and then you'll see what we achieve, and then maybe you're more convinced that, or and then sometimes it's just that there's not a fit on the business model, for instance, since some people are more focused on B2C and others B2C. So it's like, yeah, it's the totally I don't take it as a no. It's just like it's like a job application, you get, and then it's not a match, then it's fine. It's not.
Yeah, I think because I've talked to a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, and there's fear around just the rejection part of it. And what you've highlighted is my experience as well, is it isn't really like auditioning for American Idol and getting rejected. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
When you talk to a VC, you'll have a good idea of whether or not you're a good fit for each other, or whether or not the investment is a good fit for their model. And it may not be, but that doesn't mean your idea is not good. It just means that you're not necessarily a good fit for that particular investor.
You know how my example is, you see it as dating. Okay,
Yep.
you go on a date and then you're not feeling it, and they say, oh, I'm not interested in the second date, and you're like, what are you gonna do, be mad? No. Just like, okay, like, fine. But they're like, the bottom line is like, just as dating, there's so many people in the world you can date. With VCs is like, also they're like, you just have to keep looking for the right match, and it's like, there are so many. But yeah, it's true, in the beginning I was more like, oh, I need to do this one super right and like get it. But that's what happens when you just start, because you think there's only like 5 investors available. and now it's like, oh my God, like if you look on Crunchbase, there's like thousands. So it's just like, you have to keep looking and keep dating.
It's a marathon, not a race. It takes time.
Exactly.
And building up that network along the way is very beneficial. I've heard so many stories of people where the investor didn't invest in an early round, but then when they went for Series A, it was like all of a sudden they want on board, because you've kind of shown them, that you've got traction.
It makes sense. It's their job to invest in companies that are the least risk possible, and the best return. So I totally understand, and it's, they have their methods. They well know how companies grow, and like they have a lot of experience with that. So it's not, and it's in the early stages, the critical point is finding the ones who really see the team, the value of the team, or are mission driven. And then it's where you find your match. And it's not just about having all the answers, but they understand you're very early, but you have a lot of potential. So those are the ones you need to find, right?
Absolutely. Nieves, why do you love biology?
Oh my God. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing so hard, because I think, where do I start? Okay, last night, actually, I was going to sleep and I was thinking, oh gosh, this pandemic, and I feel like, I just hope, that after this pandemic, people realize that, Mother Almighty Nature knows better than any, like, created the earth and all the living organisms, and we have to, it's not just about politics and other stuff. It's like, I just hope people will treat science in a more, with better eyes, and not all this, like, it's my religion, I guess. It's like, I was thinking, I came out with godmother almighty nature or science or something. And I was like, I just was fascinated since I'm a kid, since I opened the book of natural sciences and I saw the cell with the nucleus and all that. And I was like 10 years old or 11, I'm not sure. And I remember the book, I have the vision in my head. And I was like, oh my God, I was blown away by all the intrigues and how crazy it is that a plant can create oxygen, and that's why we're alive. And like I remember studying the photosynthesis so hardcore that I went to the professor. I was like, why does a mistake in this book? Like I kind of found the electrons didn't match, and I was like, it's like I just think it's fascinating, and I wish like more people will be like dig all the intricacies of biology, and I'm a romantic.
I love that. I think biology, nature transcends so many of the problems that we have in our society and that are dividing us. There's something about nature that interconnects all of us.
Yes, and I respect, all the, when I think about, that's why I like molecular biology in particular. I mean, I like all the scientists, but in particular because it's like I remember in March we had this seminar at UC Berkeley. The biologist professor was explaining COVID from the inside, like what happens inside of the cell. And I was like, oh my God, this virus is smart. Like, it was like something is like, how can they come up with this? Like something super tricky to switch the genes, to do this, I was like, I was blown away. So those are the best engineers, or like just absolutely like the most knowledgeable beings on earth are freaking, everything's happening inside of the cell. The engineer that goes in there is just fascinating. So
it is amazing. Last question for you. What makes you excited about the future of biology? Like, where do you see the industry or the technology going?
I'm very excited because as a yeast engineer, I always thought I use yeast as a model organism to study, the underlyings of cancer, or like, so my goal was to always like do something that would contribute to the cure of disease. So as a scientist, I thought that was my only option. I mean, I didn't have many guidance in that those times, I just thought it's the only thing. So, and I didn't want to kill mice on a daily basis to kind of find the cure for cancer and all those things. And so I felt very like, yeast was my option to use that to kind of go around it, So now that I found out cellular agriculture and all these new, the use of microorganisms, my beloved yeast, to do so many products for food, for for the environment, everything. Like for me, it's like, oh my God, I'm so happy. So it's like, yay, my little friend is so useful for all these things that I mean, to be honest, it sounds very naive from me. I was like, so now I'm discovering all these applications and I love it. And yeah, I don't know where the question was actually. I got the train of thought.
I share that passion for yeast and engineering and the potential to harness what Mother Nature does so easy and naturally, and will that to make the world a better place. I think that at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking to do, is leave some sort of improvement upon the world.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, for me, is like, if you need a solution for something, look into biology or nature, because they probably have a solution already. It's like they find solutions there. I think it's a good move.
Nieves, thank you so much. This was incredible. I'm sure we just only scratched the surface of the knowledge and experience that you have. I thank you so much for doing this podcast and also offering to be my mentor And I think the work that you're doing with Novel Farms is incredible. And I think for folks who want to follow you and stay connected with you and what you're working on, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I imagine just Google my name. I think it's on here. Just Google, but my complete Nieves Martinez Marshall, and then you'll find my LinkedIn and just reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And we will definitely be in touch. And I look forward to working with you and following you soon.
All right. Thank you for having me. And it is my pleasure. This is pleasure time of the day. So thank you for that. And yeah, I look forward to our little project and move forward with it too.
Absolutely. Thank you.